guys, Discover. Welcome to my channel, Blues Breakdown. I hope this one will help you to broaden your approach, your knowledge. Forget boxes, scales, shapes. Open your ears, and your ears will help you and lead you to the right notes when you improvise. So we're talking about 12-bar blues in the key of E now. 12-bar blues can usually be divided into 3 sections. The center of the first 4 bars is usually the 1 chord, the first step in the scale. So in this case it's E. It's an E7 with the raised 9th. I show you this shape because it's the easiest way with this shape to play all the chords that we need now for this blues. So once more, it's E7 with the raised 9th. The second section of the 12-bar blues, the second 4 bars, we have a new chord here, the 4 chord. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's an A. So we have an A7 as 4 chord here. You see, it's the same shape. You just have to skip your fingers a little downwards. And the third section of the 12-bar blues is the so-called turnaround. And here we get to know the 5 chord, and the 5 chord, the dominant, is always leading back to the 1 chord. In this case, the 5 chord is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's a B. So we got a B7, you see, it's always the same shape. And it's leading back to the 1 chord, the E. That's why we call the last 4 bars of the blues turnaround. And it sounds like this. So 1 chord, 4 chord, to 1 chord, 5 chord, 4 chord, and 1 chord, and 5 chord. So now that we've learned the chords of the 12-bar blues, we can start to improvise on these changes. Well, which notes should we take for our improvisation? Of course, the starting point could be the blues scale. The E blues scale. You can find it everywhere on the neck. You can find it here, and so on. Just rolling down the scale, I don't think it's very helpful to begin with. So I would rather take just a typical fragment of the scale and try to noodle around with this. In this case, if you have E as 1 chord, you can target this E note, and you have your blues scale. You can do the same thing with the 4 chord. Yeah. And with the 5 chord. 4 chord and 1 chord. So it makes much more sense for me to approach things like this and not to try the boxes. Everybody's playing this shit, you know, it's not very useful to begin with. Of course, later on, to be able to forget your boxes and your scales, you must learn them. But now we just try to noodle around a little bit with this idea. So let's make a quick summary of the boxes and the scales we've already mentioned here, and that you should know, but you rather forget if you really try to improvise from your soul and listen to your ears, what I'm going to show you later on, how you can approach things like this. But first, the boxes and the scales. So E minor pentatonic scale. Penta in Greek, it's 5. So it's a 5-note scale, you know, we've already talked about this. 5 notes, 5 different positions on the guitar neck. So the next one is the blues scale, and you can derive from the pentatonic scale. It's a 6-note scale. They have one more note. The 6th note is the so-called blue note. It's the raised 4th. So the root is E, the 4th is A, and the raised 4th is A sharp. So we also take the 5 different positions, just the same shapes as we've already discussed in the minor pentatonic section. So after all, we should also consider that all the blues players, they are not just playing the blues scale, the pentatonics, but they also play the mixolydian and the mixolydian 8-note bebop scale. This is an extension of the dominant scale. So the mixolydian in E is like this. The bebop scale contains not only the dominant 7, but also one step above the major 7. So it's like this. So if you listen to the E minor pentatonic scale and the E minor blues scale, it sounds very similar, but the dominant scale and the bebop scale, they sound quite different. Or the bebop scale. So if you mix these scales together, there are only 2 notes outside, F and C. So let's analyze all the 12 notes in relation to the root, to the E. So this can train your ear and your thoughts into the right direction to compare all the notes in relation to the root note, and you can decide if you like it or not. That's all you have to do. But for this, let's compare all the notes in relation to the root. Let's try the first note. We go stepwise. We got E as the root note. So we can go stepwise. We can go F, the blues scale, and we put the F into it. You hear special Phrygian scent of this scale, and if you leave one note, if you leave out the G, it's almost a Spanish story, huh? So, leave it or not. So I would say you can use this F note. Yeah, it's a Phrygian, almost Spanish accent. But it's very useful. Sometimes you can use it if your ear and your thoughts are going into this direction. So I would say you can use the F note. So we have E, the root, and the F. You can choose if you want to in your improvisation. Let's go further on. The next step is a sharp F. It's the 9th note of the Mixolydian scale. So it's a scale note. Anyway, you can use it instead of G, let's say. So let's go further on. The next one is G. It's almost an anchor note. It's one of the basic notes in the pentatonic and the blues scale. So, let's sum it up. You got the root. You can play the F, you can play the F sharp, and you can play the G. Let's try it for the 4 chord, the same thing. Sounds great. Why? Because you have some colored notes. So let's try it with the 5 chord, the B. Sounds great. F sharp sounds great. Yeah, so let's go one step further. It's the G sharp. Yeah, it's a more dynamic major sound instead of the common minor sound of the blues. But it's very useful. You can play both. You can yeah, so G sharp, we bought it. Next one, A. It's the 4th note in the Mixolydian scale, and it's also a note that we use in the minor pentatonic and the minor blues scale. Yeah, very useful. So the next one is B flat. B flat, yeah. What is this? This is the blue note, yeah. So instead of playing the pentatonic shape, you can play, or you can play. We got a lot of notes to choose from. Yeah, next one is B. B is also a scale note, so it's easy to decide that we can take this note anytime because it's also in the mixolydian and also in the pentatonic and the blues scale. So the next one is C. C is not a chord note. Not in the mixolydian. We have a C sharp in the mixolydian and not in the blues scale. And we have B, but no C. Sounds good. 4 chord. Sounds also good. 5 chord. Yeah. So there are some precious moments that you can use C in your improvisation, even if it's an outside note. Let's try to take C instead of B in the blues scale. Or in the pentatonic, yeah. And 4 chord, and now the 5 chord. Yeah, you can use this. So the next one, C sharp. Yeah, Dave Gilmour, Pink Floyd, yeah. And so on. So C sharp. So C sharp, we bought it immediately. Next one, D. Yeah, of course, D is a scale note. Anytime you can choose it. 5 chord. The next one is D sharp. Of course, you can use it. Of course, you can use it for the 5 chords, let's say. But you can, so of course you can use it. It's also passing tone in the mixolydian scale. You have a mixolydian scale like this, and this passing tone is the so-called bebop scale that is used a lot by the jazz players. But you can also use it for the blues as a passing tone. So you can play like this. You can. Yeah, it's the raised 7th, so it's. But as a passing tone, it's absolutely acceptable. So, and what happens after the D sharp or E flat? We get back to our E. And what happened? You can consider all the 12 notes in your key or any key, and nothing happens if you use it in a good, tasteful context. That's only depending on your ears. So open your ears and try to compare all the notes. Of course, I recommend to choose only one outside note at one go, so you don't take all the 12 notes at once and try to play around with them, because it's a nonsense. You can choose and then just play the F. And don't mix it up with, let's say, with the F sharp. Later on, when you're familiar with these steps and your ears got used to that, you can also mix up several notes. Any note if you have a reason, and if you have something in your mind and your ear is telling you something that might be interesting or challenging, provided that you can lead your melody back to the anchor points, to the target notes that are the notes of the scale, and even the specific basic notes of the scale what we've talking about in this lesson before. For example, for E and so on. If you work hard on this and try to connect your ears and your fingers and practice all the notes in relation to the root note, you have a very challenging and very interesting way to create beautiful melodies. And play your blues solos can vary and depend on your mood, on your thoughts, on the audience, on the band that you're playing in, and this can be very helpful and very useful to forget all the boxes, the scales, and just listen to your heart and listen to your ear. And be part of the band and create beautiful music. I hope you liked it. You can push the button. See you next time.